Hello there, everybody, and welcome to the Enter the Labyrinth podcast. This time I am joined just by Luke Vonderland, or Wonderland.
Hello.
So, this has actually been a really, really big weekend for Lorcana. Probably the biggest weekend we've had in terms of like quantity of tournaments with set championships, and excitement has been sort of through the roof. I know I've been on Twitter and people are just posting their pictures with their stitches, their playmats, their tournament
Everywhere.
results.
Stitches everywhere. Playmats everywhere. Everywhere. I'm
Yeah,
jealous. I want a Stitch playmat, but I mean, I'm not too jealous. I did get a Stitch. Not a playmat, but a Stitch. Our team captain though got two Stitches and basically two playmats. He won two of them. I'm a jelly belly.
yeah, so that's
And then
Lorcana Bro. Lorcana Bro got 1-2, I believe. As far as the rest of the team, I think we did depressingly bad compared to like our normal tournament results. I think we didn't get too many. I only played one set championship. I scrubbed out of it, so yeah. But I'm glad you won a stitch.
you made top 8 of a 5K in the same weekend, so it's like the same thing, right? Like
True. Well,
game day, 5K, they rhyme kind of.
it's a 5K, but the prizing it did get pulled back a little bit because I think it was scheduled before the set championships were released. And I'll talk about it a little bit later, but we did not get the turnout that they expected because there were like 5 set championships people could go to within driving distance instead of playing the 5K. And it turns out that the stitches are worth more than like, $200 cash that you could get for top aiding a 5K. So it makes more sense to just not go to the 5K and go to the stitch tournaments instead. So I can't really blame people. Just kind of awkward timing.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people didn't think the stitches would be worth much. I think they were wrong. Um, how much more it'll go up though? There's still another week of events, kind of. Although it's kind of the end of the week. There's still weekend. I think the Sunday's the last day that there could be events, or do you know if it can go into the next?
I don't know the exact end date, but I think it's like vaguely the end of this week. It'll be over. Maybe it extends midway through the week or something weird, but I don't think it extends all the way to Friday or anything. And I'm assuming most people don't have set championships scheduled on weekdays.
You'd say that, but I kept seeing them on Twitter where they're just like, "I just won like an hour ago my fourth stitch or something." It might have been Eric, I think, who was the first to get four. Tweeted about it, and that was pretty cool. Someone in the comments can tell me who it actually was if I got that wrong. I'm sure, but that was pretty neat. I've not been able to play in that many. We did not have that many around here.
Yeah, there
But
are tons here, tons that I could have gone to, but a lot of them scheduled on the same day, which is awkward. Stores didn't really communicate, so what I've got is like a huge number of them. I think 20 plus certainly within reasonable driving distance of me over the course of these 2 weeks. I would say about like half of those are all on the 2 Saturdays, which all kind of compete with each other. So you can't really play multiple when all of them are on the same days, which sucks a little bit. But I played a 5K on Saturday. I played a Stitch event on Monday night this week, and other than that, like I've had a sick toddler. My wife's got stuff going on, so I just have not been grinding them. I know Jeebus is local to me, and he's been traveling as much as he can to play Stitch tournaments literally every single day.
I mean, I'm jealous. That would be nice to do. And all the stores around me even like kind of collab together to make sure that they weren't really overlapping. Like a couple did, but they're in like different cities completely. And I wanted to play in a few this weekend, but yeah, just as you're saying, like I've got family stuff going on one of the days, not going to make it. So I should be able to play in one more. So I have one more shot at winning that playmat.
Oh, best of luck to you. You talked about how the playmats and the cards are worth more than people thought. They're worth way more than I would have ever guessed. I would not have anticipated, the prices I've seen on eBay for these things. I wouldn't have been close, quite frankly. I'm still kind of in disbelief, which is part of like I didn't schedule my weekend around this because I apparently was the person who thought the least of what these things were going to be worth. Partly because I've played so many Magic game days in my life, and all those promos and playmats were basically
Oh
worthless.
man, so many playmats that if I could, I wish I could sell for $300 a piece.
Yeah, no
Like that
kidding.
would be amazing.
So we'll see. I've got at least one more coming up this weekend. I'll maybe try to get another one in, but I don't know if I'll be able to. I'll see.
Easy, you've got it. Easy peasy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
You have like a bunch of top 25 players in your area who are also traveling around. Like my first round, I had to play against Sean, who made like top 16 of a TIA event, and the mirror match, him playing the deck that he won. I got pretty lucky to win that, I feel. Um, and then, yeah, it's you just don't expect to play against that kind of competition in the set championships right away.
yeah, it's tough. Like some locals, I think on the Saturday, when I was busy playing another tournament, there were I think about 5 in the area going on. So on that day, you could probably get some, less stiff competition. Like if there's a 5K and 5 set championships all going on within 45 miles of each other, each individual tournament is probably a lot softer. You know, the Sunday event here, I just looked. There was only one set championships in the Twin Cities on Sunday, and it got 57 people, including Jeebus, both Lorcana twins, people who top aided the 5K the day before. Like trying to go to that as your set championships and having to play, the room's got like 10 plus Tia Beastie top 8s, top 16s that you have to fight against, and a bunch of Magic pro grinders, and it's not the set championship experience that some people have had where they're going to fight against 12 people who don't know what they're doing. And
I mean, you
kind of,
get some benefits of living in a big city, and some of the negatives are you get some sharks at your local card game
yeah,
events.
which I say is like, I show up and then people think I'm the shark. Of course, I scrubbed out on my set championships, so maybe I'm not the shark at all. But
Oh yeah, terrible, terrible, bannable.
yeah, I did not play that well either. So it is what it is. But that's okay. So yeah, I think that I don't know. In general, I think set championships is super super cool. Like just seeing how excited people are for this blew
Oh yeah,
my expectations out of the water. I did not think that this was gonna be as big of an event as it is. Like people posting on Facebook are super excited about it. People are posting all over Twitter with their pictures, like their stitches, telling their stories. People are super super excited about playing in there. Basically, for a lot of people, this is their first experience with like true competitive play, and it's not the highest level of competition, but I don't know, it's definitely a gateway to bigger competition for a lot of people.
it felt kind of like a PPTQ,
Yeah, I would agree with that.
and I mean that is kind of like the first level of competition for a lot of people, as you were saying. And it's kind of nice to see so many new people to that type of scenario, competitive scene, enjoying it and succeeding in a lot of cases. And um, kind of similar, kind of not, but it was awesome seeing people post winnings. Like,
Yeah. So for people not in the know, like a PPTQ and Magic, and I don't think they use this system anymore. I think it's gone, right? Um, but
so
it was a system where like every store could host like one per season, so like per set, like every 3 months, a store could host one PPTQ, and it was sort of the lowest level qualification tournament for the Magic Pro Tour. So like you play in a PPTQ, which is like a preliminary Pro Tour qualifier. That would, if you won one of those, then you could go play in the regional Pro Tour qualifier, which would be like um, every 3 months there would be one like per vague geographic region. So like there maybe be like one or two in,
qualified like 4 people out of it.
yeah, so like 4, depending on the size of the regional qualifier, then 4 to 8 of those people I think usually would go to the Pro Tour. So yeah, the PPTQ system was like the lowest level competitive Magic tournament that you could play, and I would agree that this felt pretty similar to that. And those were kind of done on a store level. This is done on a store level, so very very similar. And people could go around to all the different stores in the area and play them all, which is super cool. But yeah, I think
Prizes, though, the prizes felt like a PTQ or a 1K,
yes,
which
better.
was nice. Yeah, or like a 5 to 10K basically, because $600 normally don't make that much.
You look at the price of the stitches, multiply by 4. Look at the price of the playmats. It's like in terms of actual value, they've managed to get a huge amount of value into these tournaments. I don't know, if these stitches are going to maintain these prices. I don't know if future set championships are going to have the same sort of excitement. This is the first one. Who knows? Maybe these stitches are going to be more in demand than whatever comes next. There's some amount, in my opinion, that hinges on Ravensburger choosing good characters, getting good art, choosing playable cards for these promos in the future. Obviously, Stitch Rockstar.
It doesn't even see play.
Well, I think there's still a lot of potential for Stitch Rockstar to see play. I still think it's a good card. Certainly,
yeah, I love him, but
it has seen a lot of play. But also, they nailed the art. Stitch is a beloved character. People are really excited about this, and I don't know if that will continue into future sets, but I really hope it does. Yeah, I'm just
so like, what if it was like a pack tactics, right? Like,
right.
What level of rare would it need to be to just be like, oh yeah, I'm good, I'll just skip that event, like, who cares?
Right, like a Hydra or something from the current set or whatever. Like, I don't know how much the demand for these events depends on card art and the actual playability of the card, or which characters are chosen. We don't know. We won't know for a while, like until we see, how the prices for future promos and stuff shakes out. But I'm excited. I'm impressed, especially given like where we are in the life cycle of the format. This is 2 months post set release. In Magic standard terms, I think that would be basically a lame duck format. No one would care anymore. People would be over it. To get this much excitement, this many people,
creation.
this content, like this many people out to tournaments this late in the existence of a set is very, very impressive to me.
I also feel like there's been almost new archetypes in a manner, like the aggro discard wasn't really around at first, right? You had more of the mid-range, and then like, oh, let's just jam Merfolk in there, and Flynn Rider, we talked about it at the beginning, but no one really did it, and then they're just like, no, it's good now because we need to beat down these pesky blue decks that are just flavershamming their way out of like reach of the discard. It gets really frustrating when they're drawing 6 cards a turn. So you might as well just win with lore before they can just get to the critical mass.
Yeah, I think, in terms of like new archetypes too, people have been testing specifically for these tournaments, in part because there's so many of them and there's so much value in them that, if you go look at the content creation for the last like 2 weeks, it's been very, very focused on set championships, like what you can play to win set championships, how you can prepare. And, there has been other innovation too. Like, so I played Ruby Sapphire 3 weeks ago in the TBC tournament or whatever it was and made top 8. And that deck has been around for a while, but then, coming into set championships, people were so, intent on doing well and picking the best deck for the tournament that you had people like Moyen and Saviz literally days before or the day before these first set championships, they were tuning Ruby Sapphire and adding new cards and sort of putting a new spin on that archetype. And then people have been taking these, high scar count, how far I'll go Ruby Sapphire lists to extremely good finishes at set championships. So I think, that's another deck that saw a lot of evolution specifically in response to people wanting to do well at these tournaments, which is cool. You don't usually get this sort of thing for like local level tournaments.
Yeah, it's like the fastest that Paper has been trying to keep up with Pixelborn.
Yes.
Because like this is what Pixelborn's like every day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and you're aware of this, even if you don't grind like you used to. But like you're playing more Paper, I feel now. But like when we're playing on stream every day for a few hours, it's just like, oh, everyone's playing steel green aggro.
Yeah.
And then the next day it's like the counter, and then the counter to that, and then the counter to that. And it's kind of interesting because after you did well with Red Blue, like people kept playing it. And I expected it to get pushed out, and it just hasn't. And people are still playing Amber Steel into Red Blue, and
Mm-hmm.
both are succeeding. Both are succeeding. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and I don't want to take credit for Red Blue. Certainly, the deck existed before I ever touched it. And I didn't actually innovate
Nope,
that much on it.
nope,
I took a stock list for the
nope.
most part, but yeah,
No one had ever thought of playing Be Prepared and Fishbone Quill in the same deck before.
yeah, yeah. No, it's
Never.
I think that it's just I'm excited too that like the sets can be out for 2 months and there still can be this much innovation. I mean, that's crazy to me. I think both the first two sets were much more stale by this point. I think the very end of set two, Blue Steel really started to come on like in the last month. But otherwise, I mean, Ruby Amethyst kind of had dominated both formats after like a month and a half, and it was pretty clear that that deck wasn't going anywhere from the top spot. Amber Steel was competitive in set one, but those metagames were very stale at this point. Whereas,
Not compete in set two.
yeah, whereas now, we're still seeing tons of new builds, new ways to build certain decks to tune against the metagame, decks coming in and out of the format, and I think that's really exciting and bodes well for the future of the game that it can have this much legs this far into a format. So okay, well, what have you been
Yeah.
playing at your set championships? What decks have you been registering?
I played Red Blue both times.
Okay.
Um, yeah, pretty close to what I had. Like, I think I just went back to the drawing board and was like, well, this is what I got from Sailor a long time ago. I think I made a few changes. I just played what was on my dream board. Basically, I like looked at it, was like, yeah, sure, this is fine. Played a few games, crushed the decks I wanted to crush, felt good, and then I lost to Castles. When I
Mm.
lost, it was mostly to Castles, and then I did lose my top four matchup to Green Steel. They kind of just like beat me down. They drew very well. I did not draw very well. I'm pretty sure I lost my last game similar to how you lost a game in the top 16, where it's just like you're sitting there with like multiple Medusas in your
Yeah,
hand
can't play anything.
and 5 ink, and you're just like, come on, let me just do it. So I played a Heart of Tefiti on 3. I had no ink in hand. I untap. I draw 1 jump ahead.
That's so awkward.
And if I had another ink, this would be a great draw. But instead, it is just like such an insulting draw. My
Yeah.
deck was just like, I got you. I got you. The best present. A loss. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, for sure the green steel matchup with red blue is pretty polarizing. And it's weird. Have you played with the how far I'll go is at all?
Not yet.
Okay, so that card is it just makes the matchup even more kind of skewed because in the games where they don't get to take it with Ursula, how far I'll go ends up being really strong against Emerald Steel. But then sometimes it's your only song in hand and they hit it with an Ursula because you certainly can't get out of your hand before they can Ursula two drop you, and
Yeah.
then it's really bad. So it's just a very awkward matchup. Like if you can get an early Flaversham, it's not bad at all, but it's often difficult to consistently have early Flaversham plus items. So then you're kind of hoping that the Grammatalas and that sort of thing will get you there. Fishbone Quill is super awkward against Emerald Steel, so tough matchup for sure.
Yeah, most of my experience has been from the green steel side. I make them discard their hand. I win the game. If they don't top deck, be prepared.
Yeah.
If they weren't able to ramp to be prepared, when I play the red blue, I just don't drop be prepared, or they like John discarded so much that I have to play like 3 be prepareds in a row, and they still have cards somehow. I'm like, I'm supposed to have all the cards. I play Flaversham. I play Popsicle. What? How dare you draw cards off of a sudden chill? It's so rude.
Yeah.
I do love doing it myself.
You're often forced into an awkward game plan where you build a better board than them because their guys kind of have terrible stats, but you end up losing your whole hand. You get to 6 ink, you get some like a 3/3, maybe a Gaston or like a Lady Terrain or something in play, and then but you're empty-handed, and so you're kind of playing off the top, but your top decks are good, but they have resources, and their guys are kind of small. So it often creates these like really, really weird games where who wins depends heavily on like what the top of the Ruby Sapphire player's deck looks like. It's very kind of feels like a Jund-esque sort of thing in that specific
Very
element of
top
it.
deck.
Like, yeah, it's like you get to a winning position with the green steel deck, and then you're just hoping they don't top deck out of it. But unfortunately, like the green steel is not super great in a top deck war, whereas like something like Jund in Magic is often gets the top deck wars,
Yeah,
but it's actually good in a top deck war. Green
it's
steel is kind of mid in a top deck war.
like the red blue deck has so many cards that just say draw a card, draw a card, draw a
Yeah,
card, and so it's easy to win the top deck war when you're drawing 5 cards a turn.
or they're just huge. Like, oh, you've got 7 ink and you draw a Scar. Like, okay, kill all of your Flynn's and Kirstmer folks, and I have no hand anyway, so who cares? And now I've got a big Scar in play. Like that sort of thing is just really, really nice. Or like Tremaine, it's probably a little worse than Madame Medusa in that matchup, but certainly Madame Medusa come down like kill a threat, and it just a 4/4 is so big against green steel.
Just able to actually trade with most things. It's so big.
Yeah. Overall, I think I definitely think green steel wins that matchup, but I do think that it's close, and it's just it plays out very bizarrely. Like oftentimes it'll be a blowout. If you go, Popsicle turn 3 Flaversham, like they're gonna die, and then if they go Kurshmerfolk, Flynn, Prince John, then you're gonna die, and assuming you're playing the red blue deck, and just the way it goes.
Yeah, I'll just get into spots where it's like, oh, I have the ramp, I have the draw. I didn't draw Be Prepared. And
Yeah.
they played Merfolk, Flynn, Prince John, and then Friar Tuck, and then just like 2 lore threats every turn. And, that's enough to get you. Like, I I lost a game in the set champions to someone who was playing a deck that at first I thought it was like a con. And I lost the game to just double lore threats on turn like 2, turn 3, turn 4, turn 5. And I just didn't really have anything. So I was kind of just bumbling around, and all of a sudden there was like a location that when something's equipped to the tower, the Queen's Tower, and it like added another couple of lore I wasn't expecting, and I was just dead. I'm like, oh, all right. I guess, yeah, that does it. Red blue sometimes just loses to just a character return.
Yeah. Well, I do think like scars help a lot. This when I was playing red blue, the format was not really in a position where you wanted scars so much. There just wasn't a lot of like character.
There's a lot more steel, like amber steel than.
Yeah, it was like, well, and it's like I think scars pretty against amber steel as well, but there wasn't as much of this green steel where you had to worry about Ursula's taking your Be Prepared, because Be Prepared in the green steel versus red blue matchup is actually kind of a liability. I think people hold on to them too long, and oftentimes they should be like discarding them to sudden chills, because it's just like you should just know it's not going to happen. But I think Scar's a lot better. It can dodge Ursula, and is good there. But also it's like nice to take out locations. Very good against amber steel. So I think that dodging bare necessities is also really nice in some matchups. I think these 2+ Scar builds are maybe the way to go in the future.
It's crazy, but yeah. I definitely lost a game to red purple where they had multiple castles, and I'm looking at my hand of 3 Be Prepareds, and I'm like, where's my Scar?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like Fishhook and stuff also is pretty good against Castle. I lost a game to Castle as well in my set championships, where I did also play red blue and scrub out. But yeah, like if you don't have a Fishhook, 1 Scar, 1 Maui, not enough to take out a location, which can be pretty brutal, because now you spend your whole turn not removing the location, and so they get to spend their next turn, either building a board or like removing your character, and now you still have to find a way to remove the stupid location. Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't playing Fishhook. Maybe I'll go back to playing Fishhook to deal with Queen's Castle. I'm not sure.
I upped it to 2. I played 1 on Saturday, I actually won a Stitch on Saturday, and I played 2 on Sunday because I got crushed by Queen's Castle and Red Purple. I think I probably lost more to Red Purple in paper than I did on digital. And I just think like the matchup has kind of changed a little, where it's just 1, 2, 3, castle, castle.
Yeah.
And if I don't have Maui and I don't have like another source to deal with castle, like sometimes it's just enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I know obviously Maui's like the best card for answering locations. But yeah, Queen's Castle, much like Private Lands, does have the magic number, which is 7. Does not die to Scar or Maui, which is kind of perfect. Yeah, okay. I mean, in my 5K, so that's what I played in my set championships. What you played in your set championships. In my 5K, I played Flute Song. And so locally, if I'm being very serious and want to win a tournament, I think the most popular decks around me are Ruby decks. There's a lot of Ruby Amethyst, there's a lot of Ruby Sapphire, and there's a lot of Green Steel. And so I think that Flute Song for me is probably like the optimal build if I'm tryharding, which is why I played it in the 5K. And yeah, it served me well.
Try hard more at the set champs.
Well, I think Ruby Sapphire is really fun. It's also like not super taxing. I was playing on Monday night, a weeknight. I had to work that day. It's a little easier to like remove all their stuff when the way that you do it is with it be prepared and not having to do a bunch of math with like grab your sword and queen and whatever. But I digress. I think that Flute Song, in like a meta where you think there's going to be a lot of Ruby and Green Steel decks, I think Flute Song is a very good place to be, and probably the variant I would choose, right, of Amber Steel, because there's lots of ways to build Amber Steel at this point. You can play Lanterns, you can play Pride Lands, you can play Flutes, you can play no 2-drop uninkable effects like that if you want, which some people are doing, and I think that Flutes are the best way to build a deck to beat Ruby. And I also think that most of the Ruby Sapphire players have cut down or removed entirely their Judy Hops, so Flutes are...
That's a scary thing to do.
Yeah, so Flutes are looking pretty good right now. Obviously very good against Ruby Amethyst, and the deck in general. I think Steel Song just broadly, not the Flutes. The Flutes are not super great against Green Steel, but if you expect a lot of Green Steel, I think Steel Song in general is super good. Whole New World kind of blanks their discard.
You have more removal, right? So Flutes, like, you play maximum Rage, you play maximum Storm, you play the extra Zeus, like, so against the character decks, the aggressive decks, you should have a better matchup than any of the other versions.
Yep.
It's only the race mirror match where they can like ramp you out, right?
Yeah, so
you
like
can get a scenario where you're go for it.
I think, like if you're trying to determine what Steel Song variant to build, I would say if you expect a lot of mirror matches, Lanterns or Pride Lands will serve you better than Flutes. If you expect a lot of Blue Steel, same thing. But if you expect a lot of Ruby, a lot of Green Steel, then I prefer the Flutes. I guess it doesn't really matter. I think technically Pride Lands is probably the best against Green Steel, but specifically against Ruby decks, if you expect like a room full of Ruby decks, Ruby Amethyst and Ruby Sapphire, then for sure the way to go is Flutes. They have very few ways to answer them. They give you a ton of reach, and you basically have to be the aggro in these matchups, so I think it's very, very strong. But yeah, I know like Zan had been playing some Flutes in at least some of his set championships and doing pretty well. I know our Lorcana bro has been playing Flutes in his set championships. Obviously, we mentioned he's done really well. So I think that Flute Song is very well positioned right now. So if you're looking for a deck and you have a meta with a lot of Ruby, Flute Song is probably what I would pick.
Do you remember what Xeno played? Xenelos played?
Like in set championships?
Yeah, because he won a Stitch.
I don't. I would guess either Green Steel or Ruby Amethyst, though.
Probably Green Steel. He's been wrecking it with Green Steel.
Yeah. But, I mean, I think I did a good job of anticipating my metagame. I knew vaguely what a lot of players in the room were on, because it's a local metagame. You can sometimes game the system a little bit that way if you have access to multiple decks, which I did. I brought 3 decks to the tournament. Didn't know which one I was going to register until I got there. Looked around the room, made my decision then, which is a little bit cheesy. I don't know what people think of that, but it certainly can give you an edge. Like if you know you're prepared to play multiple decks and you can look around the room, see what other people are doing. It's maybe wise. I also just know what some players in the area are on lately.
Yep.
And so I look at like what people are playing, but then I also look at like what I think the best players are playing. And I think a lot of the best players around me were on Emerald Steel. And so that's...
You gotta talk to them as well and be like, what do you think the meta is going to be? And
Yeah.
like, if they're like, oh, I know that like 10 people are on red purple, it's like, oh, okay. Like, the decks I had built were designed as like, okay, if like a bunch of people are playing blue steel, I'm playing red blue. If a bunch of people are doing this, I'm playing that. And like, I knew of multiple people who were playing red purple, and then multiple people playing blue steel. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to play red blue.
Yeah. I'd heard there was a set championships the night before the 5K, and I had heard from some people that half the room was Emerald Steel, which is why I wanted to play and chose to play Steel Song. I never actually ran into Emerald Steel the whole tournament, but that was okay. I played against a lot of Ruby decks all day, and I was happy with my choice regardless. I played...
Flutes.
Yeah, Flute's just very good against Ruby Amethyst. Like, especially if you go first, it's very, very difficult for them to beat you, because you sort of get ahead on board, then you get ahead on lore, and if they B-prep, like, into your Flutes, it's not a good spot for them, right? If you're at 10 lore already and they're on the back foot, like, you maintain tempo, and you have this unremovable pressure that they can never get rid of in the form of Flute, which is fantastic. So
Spellbook wins the Ruby Amethyst mirror.
Exactly. Except it's a free spellbook, basically. Which is
it requires blood for the blood god.
Absolutely.
I mean, you have to play the songs
True.
to do it, but
so yeah, I played in... I guess I actually did play one Emerald Steel deck, but it was like the older like Bucky Morph style Emerald Steel, which I actually think is worse for Steel Song because they're playing things like more Grab Your Sword and more Tinkerbells. I forgot I actually did run into that in my winning in for top 8, but I played against like I think Blue Steel one time, Ruby Amethyst 3 times, and Emerald Steel once in Swiss, losing once to Ruby Amethyst and then beating it the other times, and then played against Ruby Sapphire in top 8 and won that and lost to Ruby Amethyst in top 4. Yeah, overall, it was a good tournament. I was happy with my deck selection. I did lose all 5 of my die rolls in Swiss, which sucks. It's not fun. And I found myself wishing that I was playing best of 2 because it was brutal. So I won most of my matches 2-0.
Best of 2?
Well, yeah.
You wish you were playing best of 2.
Well, I kind of did, yeah. When you're sitting in Swiss for the 5th round of Swiss, you lose your 5th die roll in a row. It's like, what a freaking uphill battle this has been all day. I played 12 games in Swiss, 5 rounds of Swiss. We had exactly 32 players, hilariously, which is lower turnout than we were hoping for sure. But so 5 rounds of Swiss. I played 12 games. I played 10 of them going second. That's kind of messed up that I had to play 10 games going second and only got to go first 2 times. Trying to make a top 8, that is not great odds. It's like, obviously I was winning. I would have played more games on the play had I lost some more games, but still, it's frustrating to...
You're like, I didn't get to be on the play because I just kept winning my games. If my opponents had beaten me, I could have been on the play some more. Oh,
well, I'm just trying to explain, like, how is it even possible to play over 80% of your games going second? And the answer is to just win them all.
Just win.
That is frustrating. That's one thing that I did find myself missing about the 2-game format, which was that I did not get to go first very often, whereas in 2-game format, you go first exactly half the time, which is great. I don't know. All right, well, yeah, so that was my, my 5K experience. It was not a big 5K. It was like a small 5K. Frankly, I was similar in size, I would say, to just a random set championships, but I did top 8, and I was pretty happy about that. One thing I will say, because then I flamed out of set championships the day after, or 2 days after that, is that, when you're like a minor personality or whatever in the community, it feels like there's this pressure on you to do well in every single tournament. Where every time I scrub out of a tournament, I'm like, oh man, people are gonna think I'm washed up or whatever, which is probably not true because that happens to everyone in TCGs. But I know I have that pressure
Imposter
sometimes.
syndrome.
Yeah,
Imposter
yeah, which is
syndrome.
weird. Like now that I've got whatever six or seven top eights and 1Ks or bigger, you think I would get
You
over it,
have
and
you have so many, like, such a good record.
I
Like,
know.
you're
Well,
sitting here
yeah, and
like,
it's like,
oh, I'm so bad. I'm so bad. I'm sitting here like I haven't top aided any of these
yeah,
things.
yeah, just to, like toot my own horn a little bit here. I did finish third in the hidden elo in set two in Pixelborn, and I'm on the elo leaderboard on Pixelborn now or whatever. But I don't actually think those things are particularly
My
meaningful.
only achievements, Pixelborn, like top 25s.
Yeah, I don't think the elo on Pixelborn is. I mean, I think it's like difficult. I think if you're a bad player, it'd be very, very hard to get high on the leaderboards. But I don't think it's actually that important. If you're wondering if you're a bad player because you've been playing 100 hours of Pixelborn and you're not on the leaderboard, the answer to that question is unequivocally no. It doesn't really mean that much. I wouldn't worry too much about it. But yeah, I do think that there's this weird pressure, or like, I don't know. I wonder what people think of me, because I play a lot online, but I don't play that much in locals, and people know who I am sometimes when I go to locals, and then I go out, and then they see me flame out of a tournament, and they're like, "Wait, is he actually bad?" Which maybe like I'm probably not as good as some people think I am.
Should I not be watching his videos?
Yeah,
Like,
seriously.
I
I
like
don't
how
know.
you
Maybe
checked your
not.
headphone right there. You're like, wait, wait, wait. Is it not working? No, I
Well,
was
I mean,
muted.
some people I do think I'm or like content creators are better players than they are. I think there's oftentimes like a lot of very good local players who just don't have like results because they either haven't tried or haven't had the opportunity to play big competitive tournaments or whatever. So, I don't know what level any particular viewer or listener is at, but I think there are a lot of great players out there, and the community has caught up a lot. I would say in set one, set two, I did feel way ahead of the vast majority of players, but even locals now are much closer in skill level, I would say, to the top players than they used to be, which is probably the nature of a relatively new game.
Yeah, I've noticed more local players who at the set championships they were all playing like actual decks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and these are the same people that I noticed them weeks ago, months ago. They're playing their pet decks at locals, so like they're I don't know how much longer they're going to keep doing that. Like, they'll still brew and make their own decks, right? But like they are aware of the meta and it is adjusting how they build decks. So it's like interesting to see how they're becoming more competitive with these events. It's kind of neat how it's just bringing in way more players than just a normal like game day would.
For sure. So in other news, obviously the set championships has really, really shaped the way people think about Lorcana this week, but it is spoiler season. We have been
Oh
getting
yeah.
tons and tons of new spoilers, so I figure today we can go through some of those. There's no way we could possibly go through every single spoiled card, at least not in the sort of depth I might like to. So we'll probably cherry pick some here and there, and I'll throw them up on screen, and we can talk about these cards because there's some really exciting stuff in set four, which is Ursula's return coming up pretty soon. I think it comes out probably a month from now ish, like around when Atlanta happens, slightly before maybe in local game stores. So, is there any card that sticks out at you, Wonderland?
I mean, Ursula herself, right? Like, getting to bare necessities them every turn, like, is pretty good. You can just play Morph and just instantly discard a song to put it on there. If you're on the play, how are they going to kill that? Like, they haven't spoiled a card yet that destroys that
So
on the play.
so this card is just for anyone just listening. It is Ursula, Eric's Bride. It's a 4-cost uninkable 2/4 with an alternate shift cost, so you can discard a song card to shift this onto another Ursula, and then whenever this character quests, chosen opponent reveals their hand and discards a non-character card of your choice. So it basically, every time you quest with it, it has 2 lore pips, and every time you quest with it, it does bare necessities against your opponent. So this is obviously an extremely powerful card, and I think actually one that will probably see play even without the shift line. Like, they're just going to be Amber decks that want to put this in their deck because that's extremely potent, right? Your 4-drop threat now also removes their Be Prepared. So if you're playing an aggro deck, this is like a pretty strong card, I think.
It's just good, like either or. Like she's just going to constantly be clearing the way of removal if you're, as you were saying, like in the aggro spot. But even control versus control, like taking out their card draw or taking away a flute or a whole new world, like possibly. It's just like a pretty powerful card. Definitely going to see more play and more aggressive strategies for sure.
Yeah, I think the stats are just right on it. 2/4, 2 lore. It doesn't die.
They did print an answer though, like as well. That the 3 mana, the 3 ink action that just destroys a character with 2 or less power. I do believe. I'm looking for it right now. It'll probably see more play because of her than if that brawl. Banish chosen character with 2 or less power.
Yeah, so 3 cost inkable, banish chosen character with 2 strength or less. Yeah, I think that's definitely a card you'll see play too. It's nice. Ruby's had a lot of removal, but it hasn't had a lot of like low to the ground removal. It just had Teeth and Ambitions, which had some deck building restrictions and did some weird damage to your stuff. But yeah, I definitely think Brawl is a card that we'll see play for sure as well.
It also answers another card people are very happy about seeing, or very hyped about, I should say, and that's Diablo. The 3 cost 2/2. You can shift by discarding an action card, and it has evasive. And on your opponent's turn, if this is exerted and they would draw a card, you draw a card, and that is insanely powerful, I think.
Yep, I agree. That's another card that that's definitely going to see some play. I'm curious, do we have any other Diablo cards revealed to shift this onto at all? I'm not sure if there were any.
New ones? No. I'm pretty sure there's a 1-drop purple one from last set.
Do you know what the stats are on it?
I want to say it's a 2/1. I will look it up right now.
But I agree. This is a very powerful card. It's the sort of thing where they have to have the answer in hand ready to go, because if they have to dig for it, that is not going to fly. You're going to get a bunch of cards. So I think it's definitely going to be a high power card. The fact that it's evasive makes it hard to remove. I'm excited about Diablo. Obviously, it's uninkable, but
it's a 2/1 for 1 that when you play a Maleficent, you may look at the top card and put it on the top or bottom.
Interesting.
So it synergizes with other good purple cards already. Like,
yeah, it definitely seems like a card that could see some play. Like, even without the shift line, just as a 3-drop, I think it's a pretty reasonable card. The thing to notice, after you quest with it once, like, you're gonna get a card no matter what, because your opponent has to draw at the beginning of their turn. So it's sort of the first card's a lot easier to get. Obviously, they can remove it before you ever get a chance to exert it, but yeah,
like,
very good.
Purple Green already has a wide assortment of good aggressive 1-drops, but now the Diablo, as well as Chernobog's Followers and Pascal and the new Pegasus, which is just a 1-cost 1/1 quest for 1 evasive. This basically makes a 2/1 evasive. Well, it makes a 2/2 evasive technically, but it makes the other one do that, and it replaces itself right away. Will probably not die. It's almost like you're gonna have to play Fire the Cannons or Baboom to be able to deal with that, I think, or some other new cards are going to show us to answer it. But it seems like that could be a menace.
Yeah, certainly it's a sort of card where if your opponent puts a Diablo down and you just have no way to answer it, like, you're going to be in some trouble, because it's just like you can't dig.
Extra card every turn.
Yeah, that, like, if you're trying to bounce your Merlin Rabbit or whatever to try and find an answer to this, they're just getting card after card after card, and by the time you find your answer, they're completely gassed up, and I think there's some real potential here. I definitely think Diablo is going to be a card that sees play. Certainly a card I'm excited to try.
At least they have to discard an action.
Yeah, so let's talk about the new shift mechanic, which is just like alternate shift costs. How do you feel with that?
Oh, I love it. Like, it's just a new area to kind of explore a little bit, add more variety. It's going to be an interesting thing. We have the cards. We have all of the discard as a disadvantage cards,
Mm-hmm.
and we have maybe one payoff, which is what Chernobog, and
Yeah.
maybe Hades as like a way to minimize the disadvantage from discarding a card. But eventually, we're going to get something crazy that like triggers when you discard, or a Prince John for yourself. And plus, Prince John in this set triggering off of your opponent's shifting cards is kind of neat too.
I do think some of these cards are going to create some very swingy games. So the nature of the shift ability to begin with is that you're sort of stacking two cards into one to get a big tempo advantage. Now, if you discard another card to shift, you're sort of putting three cards. It's very eggs all in one basket. And if that character sort of eats your removal spell on the next turn, you're going to be way, way, way out on resources. So there's some
Whole new world time.
yeah, so it's very good, with a whole new world. But I think it's going to create some very like quick games where one player either blows you up with a quick shift that you can't deal with, like a Diablo, or you put your Diablo in play. You're down three cards, and then they baboom it, and you basically lose immediately. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I think that shift is already a pretty powerful mechanic. I worry about making like free things even freer.
I guess it does cost two cards to play, so it does need to live a turn to equalize.
Yeah, like Diablo. Relevant. Yeah, you do need to draw two cards. Like if you shift, you get the one card right away, but you do spend. You've got the one character, the card you discarded, and Diablo itself. So it's three cards you're down. You get one back right away. You would want to get a second one, but it's still a very, very high powerful play. Like I want to be on the side of the person making that play, and you can choose not to, right? So if your opponent is playing fire the cannons, boom, etc. answers,
just hard cast it.
Yeah, you can hard cast it. You're not forced to like go for this high risk shift line, and then against decks that don't have those answers, then you can make that choice. Like you're playing against Blurple or whatever, and you're like, oh, there's nothing they can do. Then you put your Diablo in play, and then they lose, and So I don't know. I think it's cool. It's certainly
getting teethed.
Yeah.
I'm not going to want to have that get teethed. It's going to feel so bad when they like teeth a Cusco to kill that.
It's definitely a unique design space. I'm curious to see where it goes. I think that discarding a card may be a pretty great cost. I think the bar for a lot of these cards is going to be how good are they without their shift, because I think paying a few ink is more palatable than risking putting three cards all in one character. I think you're starting to get to very high risk territory at that point.
People are already complaining about how high rolly a whole new world is.
Yeah.
Just wait till you're shifting like three characters for free before you do it.
Yeah, do we have any like 5-cost characters that shift with alternate costs that we can discard a card, put a 5-drop in play, then sing a whole new world? Because then the cards don't matter. I could see that being.
Ursula is the highest of 4.
Like imagine the tempo swing of that, though.
But two Ursulas sing these new 8-drop songs that I'm going to segue us into right now.
Sure.
The sing-along mechanic. What do you think about that?
So sing together basically lets you use multiple characters to like sing the total cost of a song. Similar to how you would sing a song traditionally, but you can sort of pool your singing power to get one big effect. Overall, I think that's interesting. Again, similar to Shift, in my opinion. I think songs in general are a very dangerous mechanic. They have the potential to be very broken. And as a developer, I hope they're, game designers, I hope they're aware of that possibility that making things cheaper or free is high risk. But I would say most of these are not super risky. A lot of these effects are not insanely powerful. There's two 10 cost ones that one draws 5 cards in Amethyst, and then that's second star to the right, and then Mob Song in Steel is like 3 damage to 3 chosen characters and or locations. I think the Steel one does seem like a pretty minor benefit over like Grab Your Sword to me. I don't know that dealing 3 damage to a location is super valuable. 3 damage is often not enough to destroy a location, so at that point, it's kind of, you're jumping through a lot of hoops to get like a mildly better Grab Your Sword.
I kind of don't like it. I don't think it's as good as Grab Your Swords.
I agree, yeah.
It's like you get to hit 3 characters. Like the 3 damage to a location doesn't matter, but like this isn't hitting Cogsworth.
Nope.
This isn't hitting Bucky. It's not hitting Prince John.
True. I didn't even mention the fact that a lot of these ward threats, which are some of the most important things to hit with your Grab Your Sword, do not get hit by this. So
yeah, it's like, now that said, it's quite possible that like something gets printed, it does hit Ursula.
Right.
Doubling this with an Ursula is maybe good. Dealing 6 like kills some Flabbershams.
I mean, that's definitely good, but that's, again, you're jumping through a lot of hoops for that. The question is whether that's worth jumping through.
Still doesn't even kill Castle. You double it with an Ursula, and it still doesn't kill Castle. The fact that you can't like, for 10 ink, I should be able to kill a McDuck Manor with just this.
Yeah, like target the same thing multiple times. Yeah, that would definitely make the card better for sure. So I don't know about that one. I think drawing 5 cards is that's a playable effect. I don't know what deck it would ever fit into. It's like there's some awkwardness because these cards want you to sort of go wide, have multiple characters in play. But if you're like ahead on board enough to have multiple characters in play to be singing 10,
I mean,
just quest and win the game.
That's just a rabbit, a crab, and a goat.
I know, but like if you got rabbit, crab, and goat in play, I get that drawing 5 cards is nice, but just sing your friends and then quest for 2. Like you just want to end the game. When you have a board big enough to sing some of these songs, I feel like oftentimes it might just be a better play to try to win the game.
But if you're green purple, those 5 cards might make it that then when your opponent untaps and plays Be Prepared, you have more sauce.
It's true.
I'm not telling you to play a 10 draw 5 cards in your aggro deck, but like it's possible that this is like treasure, and we are just completely not registering it. So what do we go? 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop, 4 drop. Did I count too high? 1, 2, 3, 4. So then turn 5, we can sing this with all of our characters. That seems like a lot of work.
Like that's a lot of hoops to jump through. I think if you're doing this sort of thing, it's going to be in a mid-range deck with Ursula, or in some deck with like shift characters that are, you're getting some other like cheapening effects by shifting or whatever. I just
what about Cindy, Sebastian?
Yeah.
Then Minnie or whatever, the singer. That's 3 characters.
Or like Ariel. I mean,
3.
There's ways to do it. So if you're using singers, there's some potential there as well. I think these cards are really hard to evaluate because anything that can give you an effect for cheap tends to be high potential, but these effects are not necessarily game breaking, and a lot of these expensive cards are uninkable, which is high risk. Like, oh god, if you get Grab Your Sworded or Be Prepared and you're stuck with a 10 cost uninkable card in your hand, that is going to be a maximum level feel bad. So I am skeptical, but it's really hard to evaluate these cards for sure.
Yeah, especially when like a card like Dig a Little Deeper, which is an 8 cost, sing together 8, look at the top 7 cards of your deck, put 2 into your hand, put the rest on the bottom. Like, that's a very powerful ability. It's a very combo card, though. So, like, most likely this card is going to see 0 play and do nothing, or is going to be so oppressive and people are going to hate it.
I think
unlikely to be an in-between.
I'm not sure if this is supposed to be a reference to Dig Through Time, but it looks like a reference to Dig Through Time. Like if you look at it, it costs 8. You can play it for much cheaper, and it is literally Dig Through Time. I mean, it feels
I tweeted a meme of the look at these, it's the same picture.
okay. Yeah, yeah,
Dig Through Time and this because like yeah, they're I even said I dig it. Like
yeah. Like it's got Dig in the name, so it feels almost like a tongue-in-cheek reference to Dig Through Time to me. And honestly, the more I look at this, it has to be right. There's no way that no one noticed how similar they are. But anyway, I think this card, it just like it's
and it's
good.
blue.
Yeah, wow, yeah, but like the effect is obviously good. I just don't know that is the juice worth the squeeze. I'm not really sure.
And I like look at this family. The Inkable, which is big.
Hmm.
7 cost. Obviously, song, action, sing together. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck. You may reveal up to 2 characters and put them into your hand. You may put the rest of the bottom. That could be pretty good. Also, kind of a combo card, but because it's inkable, I was talking about this on my chat today, where it's like if you remembered the Ducky Steadfast deck
Yeah,
from set 1 or 2, you mix this, you put the new Ariel, the 4 costs that like can sing 7. That I think that's literally all it is. It's a 4 cost 4/4 or 3/4 some a 4 cost 3/3 singer 7 quest for 2. That she alone will sing this new 7 cost song. And then you can just grab like a Maui or a Scar. So like if you're running lanterns to ramp, so you're already just playing characters for the business, right? Like you're killing things with characters, you're ramping for characters. Your Rapunzel becomes better because your characters are dealing the damage, right? A card like that is 7 ink to draw 2 cards good?
I don't know. I that this one has more potential than the previous ones we talked about, just because it's inkable in my opinion. Um, being ink, you can find off Ariel is sweet. Obviously, songs just are a little bit better at Amber because of Ariel. I think Amber and Emerald, now with Ursula are sort of the premier song inks, and the fact that it's inkable makes it so you're not going to get hosed. If you lose your board, you can still get some value out of this card. Where those other cards, if you lose your board, you just get nothing. Like you just have a terrible card. So I think that helps a lot. Still, Be Our Guest is like kind of medium, and it's half this effect for 2. And I don't know that.
Way less.
Yeah, I don't know that going all the way up to 7, even if you can use multiple characters to sing it, to get double of a card, most people aren't even playing to begin with, is going to be worth it.
I almost feel like we should be looking at 10 cards.
Yeah, something so like you don't miss. Like that's another concern too, is if you're playing a song deck, right, with Amber, these days, a lot of Steel Song decks are playing like 20 songs plus, 4 non-song cards, like in the form of Prylands, Lantern, etc. Like suddenly half your deck maybe is not characters, and like this is not a card that feels like it should ever miss. But in some Steel Song
Right.
decks, like it will miss on rare occasions, and that's going to be a horrible feeling.
Even if you only get half of it, it's just like, oh my, I
Yeah,
just sang 7 for Be Our Guest.
yeah, that is. It's not going to happen often, but
It's
I
gonna feel
do
so bad when it
like
does.
even if they just made it like 7, like dig a little deeper, so that you just basically remove the chance of missing entirely. That would be nice. But yeah, 5 is not that much. Like it's not that much dig for a 7 cost card.
Another card I saw that I kind of liked, which has another alternate shift. It's discard a location card on this one, and it's Aladdin, a 3 cost 3/3 quests for 1. Whenever this character quests, you may banish chosen item. So
Yeah.
similar to Wild, it's like Wildcat and
Yep.
Benja around there, but it does get to quest for less, can be attacked, challenged a lot easier. But it's also probably the best baby Aladdin that there is.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. It's just discarding a location, which I don't know that there's enough locations you actually want to play to have that any, you know, reasonable amount of the time. But when it's
Maybe.
action, like when discard an action or a song, I feel like there are decks that play enough actions or songs that's pretty easy to hit those requirements. But discard a location is that's a that's honestly a pretty big ask.
Yeah, it like, what are you shifting that onto?
Right.
It's an interesting ability, but it's funny. I see it more as the baby character. I see
Mm.
this as the character we're shifting the 7-drop onto,
And
not
honestly, it might
as
be.
I'm shifting this onto the ward 2/2.
Yeah, yeah,
I got him good. Like, but that said, but shift this on Bucky, discard a Bayou, destroy your Fishbone Quill, and then like, because you're already playing at least one location, you don't necessarily need to shift it. Because it has shift, it's going to trigger Bucky's. So it's a 3-drop shift character for
true.
Bucky. And that's actually probably its best attribute. You don't have
It
to
might
shift
be.
it to hit the Bucky trigger.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Or Blue Fairy, you know, like while we're
yep.
talking about it.
Man, I didn't even think about that. That makes this card look so much better to me right now. Like, anything to make Bucky and Blue Fairy better.
Yeah, that's true. Like some of these cheaper ones, you know, Olaf too maybe has some potential, right? It's a 3-drop inkable 1/4 shift by discarding an item card, and whenever it quests, each of your other characters gets plus strength equal to this character's strength. So it's basically like support for your whole team. It's only one, but I mean, this is a pretty aggressive card. Like it's a 1/4 that quests for 2, and you can just play it on turn 3. Like you don't need to shift, and it'll trigger your blue fairies or your buckies. Like that's actually a pretty, you know, maybe there's gonna be like this sapphire deck that you pair with either emerald or amethyst and do this like
Diablo is
yeah
also got that shift. Then another reason for Diablo to be good.
right. So like an emerald sapphire like aggro bucky deck.
Oh,
Starting to look
Bucky
pretty good.
and Blue Fairy in the same deck.
Well,
Yes, finally.
well, you could
This
do
is
that
cool.
with Diablo, but you couldn't do it with like Olaf. But yeah, it's I do think that there's some potential here, like to trigger those cards, those Floodborn cards from set 2 for sure.
Ursula gets to do that too, and
Yep.
she's just great.
Yeah, you know, maybe we were looking at these wrong. Maybe you can just ignore the shift ability. Maybe they're just like, maybe the relevant text is just Floodborn and not the shift ability.
Right.
With some of these cheap ones, I
We
think
need,
that maybe.
like, it's unlikely BOGO just becomes super good, right?
Yeah, I mean, it could be played. I think the awkward thing about BOGO is that BOGO comes down after you want to play some of these cards. Like,
the
I don't.
turns you want to be Floodborn in,
Yeah.
basically.
Whereas Bucky and Blue Fairy come down on turn 2, and then you can do the stuff afterward, which, you know.
And then the Amber one heals. So unless we get more characters that are self-damaging constantly,
Yeah.
we do get the new Rapunzel, but like we don't want a 2-drop that's healing to do that. But if
Yeah.
we get more characters if we get a character that's like a better version of the Rapunzel we have. I think there's a Rapunzel that whenever you heal, you draw a card, but it's just like kind of slow and overstated. Like if we got a better version of that, like with more good heals, maybe I could see it, but not yet.
I think 2 of my favorite cards that we've had spoiled so far are actually these cheap-ish Ruby Rush characters. So I'm super excited about Red Rafiki, which is let's see if I can find it real quick here.
Some
It's-
uninkable and playable
Well,
card.
no, it's Hercules, Clumsy Kid. It's a 3/3 quest for 1, has Rush. It's basically exactly Rafiki from set 1, but in Ruby and not Amethyst. This is a card I'm excited for, and I think we'll see play. It's not Foxman.
Just Mufasa's.
Yeah, I mean it's not Foxman, but I think like the reason Rafiki right now is seeing no play isn't because Rafiki is an unplayable card. I think it's because Foxman is just so much better, and they sort of fight for slots. You know, now you can have this effect in a deck that doesn't have Amethyst, and I do think that this is going to like this is the sort of card Ruby Sapphire right now would kind of love to have a card that can, you know, bridge.
Uninkable.
Well, I mean, Uninkable was tough for sure, but it can, like it's a sort of card like a Ruby control that can use to bridge the early game. Can hit multiple characters. Like that's kind of what Rafiki's strength was, and Foxbeam's strengths, that you can remove something that doesn't have 2 power and then it sticks around. So you get this value, you get this instant removal effect, and this character that sticks around. I think it's going to be useful. But then there's a similar card in Goofy Super Goof, which is a 4-drop, Inkable, 2/4 rush, and it also quests for 1. But whenever this character challenges another character, you gain 2 lore. So it's like kind of got that Shere Khan effect, but double. And so it's kind of like a really big rush Queen of Hearts, if that makes sense, but sort of can help you close games. I think there's going to be like a mid-range deck. If 2 strength is good in the format, like there's a lot of Cuscos or Goons or whatever running around, I think that the Super Goof card is going to be pretty good too, just as a card that controls the board and pushes you for lore, which is it's pretty quick at it. Like 2 lore out of nowhere is not nothing.
Very true. Speaking of 2 lore out of nowhere, the Pirate's Pillage, I think, is very good with Queen. Or with Ursula. Like, a Pirate's Life. Each opponent loses 2, you gain 2. I think it's very good with Ursula. Like, to drain 4, I think for a Ruby Emerald one, it's just, like, solid. You didn't just talk about that, did you? Did I just like blank that out?
No,
Okay. It's like, did I segue the card you just talked about into the card you just talked about?
No.
That would be hilarious.
I'm personally not really a Pirate's Life believer. I don't see a world in which you want to play, even seeing a 6-cost card that doesn't do anything on board. I think maybe it's like top end reach in an aggro deck. You could like slot like a copy or 2 in your deck, especially if you get Ursula.
That's what I'm thinking.
I don't know. I don't really believe it's going to happen. Prove me wrong, I guess. It just 6 is a lot, even when song, to have no effect on the board state.
Oh, I would agree with that aspect of it. I like the fact that 2 3-drops that quest for 1, if 1's an Ursula, goes for 4. That's basically what I like about it. It's probably not good enough, but
Thinkable. It's got that going for it, which some of these other sing together songs do not have. Yeah.
Like, I'll try it. I mean, I tried the Queen that you discarded cards to gain lore as well, which is why I keep saying Queen instead of Ursula.
Yes.
But like, I think it could have some reach. It's just a burn card.
Yeah. It's tough, like burning for 2. So like in Magic, the sort of the gold standard is like burning 3 for 1 cost, and in Lorcana like 2 for 6.
This card would cost 2 in Magic.
Yeah, and it would be bad.
I mean, Lightning Helix. Yeah, it'd be like a worse Lightning Helix.
Yep.
Well, I mean, Lightning Helix with Convoke would be not terrible.
Yeah. No comment. I don't even know how to evaluate Lightning Helix with Convoke. It's like what a weird card that would be. But yeah, I think I'm not a believer in a Pirate's Life. Anything else? Any other cards you're really excited for?
The Muses are pretty. It's a 4-cost ward, 2/4. Whenever you sing a song, not when but whenever any song, I think it's saying it might just be played. I'll put it up right now. Whenever you play a song, you may return chosen character with 2 or less power or attack to their player's hand. And I think that's pretty good. Like, play an Ursula on 3, turn 4, drop this, sing, storm, kill 2 things, bounce their other 2 things to their hand. They have no characters in play anymore.
Yeah, I do think there's some potential here, because curving 3-drop Ursula into this, like, it doesn't even matter what song you sing. That's going to be a game-winning play. Like, Strike a Good Match, sung twice off Ursula with the Muses in play, that'll win games. That's obviously, like, if you have, a removal spell, suddenly it's like kill 2 things, bounce the 2 things that I couldn't shoot down with Let the Storm Rage on. Suddenly, like, that's just straight up game over against most people. So I do agree that there's some potential here, especially in either like an Emerald Song deck, which may be shaping up, or just any deck with Ursula.
Another really neat thing of it with Ursula is you can just bounce the Ursula
Mm-hmm. To
with it
protect it,
on the
yeah,
second one to protect it. It just
for
has
sure.
so many uses. I think it's actually quite good. You get a replay, you get a bounce and replay the Deceiver to take cards out of their hand. Um, in purple green, you get to sing Friends with Maleficent and bounce it back to its hand and replay it. Same with uh, Rabbit and Goat. Not Goat, Rabbit, but pretty good there. Like, it would be pretty good with Goat too, but
Mm-hmm.
luckily it does not work.
There's some synergy here too with like discard effects. So one thing that a card like this tends to be really good with is just any clock at all, because if you bounce a lot of stuff and buy a lot of time, but you don't put out any sort of pressure of your own, it doesn't necessarily do a lot of good. But paired with something like you know the Cursed Merfolk or Flynn Rider in Emerald, putting on a clock with something like this is going to be huge. And then there's some synergy also with like discard effects. Obviously,
Yep.
Sudden Chill is a song. You can use it to bounce a character and then make them discard it. So like now your Sudden Chills are live even when they're empty handed, which is really
Yep.
really cool.
It's like, oh, you think you're protected from
Yeah.
Prince John. No, no, you're not. My ward characters are just going to dominate you. And it's kind of interesting to see ward characters becoming good again. It's like, Lady Tremaine is looking nice again. And we have another card. Let's just segue into another new spoiled card. Be King Undisputed, a 4-cost song that just each opponent chooses and banishes one of their characters. So unlike the blue one that makes each person ink their card, like this only affects your opponent, and it's each of them for multiplayer, and is a song. Like, it's not terrible.
Yeah, it's another one I'm not a huge believer in. I think a big part of something like Lady Tremaine being good is the fact that the body on Lady Tremaine is decent. Obviously, there's no body here on Big B King Undisputed. So I think like if this is an inkable card, it's great, but as an uninkable, there's just too many like 1/3s and Chernobox followers and goons running around that you don't want to.
Yeah,
It's a high risk card. Like it's going to be really bad a lot of the time. For
I think it's gonna be very meta dependent.
yeah, I'm skeptical that it'll see much if any play, but I think that obviously.
I just want my Sebastians to do something.
Well, if you're a Sebastian believer, I think this is the set bodes well for you. I assume we'll probably get some more sing together cards, although maybe not. Most sets have not had a ton of songs, so we may have actually seen the bulk of sing together cards at this
You
point.
think just one per color?
I don't know. I don't know, but it's
It
assuming there
might
are
be.
other songs in the set. Maybe it's going to be a song heavy set. I don't know. What their
I was
plans
hoping
are.
for at least two, but it could be that there's just one in the main set for each, and then
Hmm.
there's another one or two, because we don't know all the cards from the new co-op mode game,
Ah,
right?
yes. No, I don't think so, but I don't know much about that.
When I first saw these cards, I actually thought they were for the co-op mode, and was
And
like, "Oh, do I need to worry about this? What is
I'm
this?"
guessing that was a deliberate decision. Like it makes sense to like thematically print it there, but yeah, it is weird almost though. Like 'cause you can't use other people's characters, can you? I don't think so.
Oh,
I,
it says you and your teammates.
okay, yeah. So I guess it makes sense. That's probably why they're in this set. It goes with the co-op game, but still,
It yeah. I would assume there'd be some more. These are all what rares?
no, I don't think so. I could be wrong. What do I know?
Rare,
Uncommon,
rare.
uncommon. No, they're not all rares.
Whoa, dig a little deeper is an uncommon.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if that's going to be in a precon.
I very
What?
well could. Like these cards, I don't know. I don't know where they came from. I'm not super up to date on like I don't follow spoiler season that closely. Some people really do. So I don't necessarily know where these cards came from as far as who spoiled them and in what context. So maybe they are from precons.
It was just an article by like a gaming website.
Okay.
All of them are rare or less, which
Maybe there's going to be like a super rare. I kind of doubt they're going to spend a legendary slot on
do
these, but
do we have any actions or songs that are higher rarity than a rare?
good question. I can't think of one. I know lots of rares. I can't think of any. There are items like Lucky Dime,
Yeah.
locations. Oh, I guess there aren't really any super rare locations. I don't know. I'm not sure what their rare distribution is or how they want to do it, but yeah, maybe we'll get more of these, but I can't imagine it's going to be a ton more.
It's like what, a 240 card, 204, one of the two.
Yeah, I don't know.
Chat, let me
204 it
know.
looks like.
Comment below. Let us know how many cards. Even though he just said 204 and the cards in front of me says 58 of 204.
All right, well, what card are you most excited to play with so far that you've seen?
Ooh. I mean, this Mulan looks kind of fun. Like the 6 ink, 2/6, quest for 2, shift 5. When you play it, if you use shift players, she gets +3 attack. On your turn, whenever she deals damage to a character in a challenge, deal the same amount of damage to other characters. It's just like an interesting, fun for me, bad for them, because it's like killing all of their stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
does a very
Legends are
good.
just going to be a blast to play.
It does a very good Tinkerbell impression. I think obviously the ping on enter is very good for Tinkerbell, but if you shift this, like the turn you play it, it's very similar to like shift Tinkerbell, and then when hard cast, I think it's slightly worse than Tinkerbell, just because the one damage
Yep.
immediately is so strong. Still, if you're not playing Steel, you don't have Tinkerbell. Like this is a passable impression,
Well, this doesn't have to kill the
right?
character
Hmm.
challenge.
Yeah, so
And
there's
I think that's
differences,
the big thing.
but I think overall it's very similar, and it's like a good thing that doesn't have to finish off a character because two strength is sort of not where it's at.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard to finish a lot of stuff with that. Still, I agree. This is a card that seems like it's going to see play. I don't think it's as good as Tinkerbell, but comparing a card to Tinkerbell is that's good company.
A lot of people thought Tinkerbell wouldn't even see play in set 2, right? Like, people were cutting it all the time, and she comes back.
I mean,
Like,
it's a sort
all
of
the staples.
the card pool is deep enough that at some point you have to make a decision about what kind of deck you are. There are so many powerful cards you can play in every ink at this point that you can't play all of them. You have to decide what sorts of effects you want for whatever archetype you're playing. And obviously Tinkerbell is not going to fit in every single steel archetype, but the notion that Tinkerbell would be a bad card is a little bit ridiculous, I think.
Very much so, I think. What do you think of Ariel, the new 6-drop one?
Um let me find it real quick. So so six drop Ariel is a steel card. Ariel Sonic Warrior. It's a 3/8 shift 4 quest for 2. And whenever you play a song, you may pay 2 to deal 3 damage to chosen character. I don't really think this is going to get there. I'm guessing it's going to see little to no play. It's too expensive, I think. Obviously, if you get to keep it around, it's going to take over a game, but it's actually pretty slow at it. And if you shift it for 4, like you actually need 6 to get the effect that turn. So shift it, use
Yeah.
it. It's like it's a big ask in my opinion. So I don't know. The fact that it's 3 dies to Mana Medusa is pretty awkward.
Kind of like the Pluto.
It does feel very similar to Shift Pluto to me, where it's like almost there, but like make it if it shifted for 3, if it costed 5, one of those two would do a lot to make this card better. As it stands, I am skeptical. Like I'm not putting this in Steel Song. Maybe early on, I'll try it maybe as a 1 or 2 of just to see what it does, like get a feel for it, because there's potential here. Obviously, this effect is very powerful, but I don't think it's cheap enough.
I would have loved this card in set 1.
Yeah, it would have been amazing there, where the stats would have been huge.
There.
There's no Madame Medusa. How do you kill that thing? Like Dragonfire?
I might have even liked it in set 2, when if you got into Beast Off, right? Like it's a way to like damage a beast.
Yeah,
that's not questing, but it looks awesome, and it has a lot of stuff it does, and I like that amount of it. But I think you might be right; that's just too slow. I'm gonna jam it decks.
I've been wrong before. I thought Lucky Dime was too slow, and I was wrong about that. So,
I mean, it is slow, but it's pretty dang good.
Yeah, it's gonna depend on like how slow does it play out, how slow is the metagame, and also how strong is that ability. You know, if 3 damage destroys everything you want to get rid of, then it starts to look a little better. Like, I don't know. We'll see.
4 is a lot, though.
Yeah. Shift 4 is a lot. 6 is a lot to hardcast for that. And 2 to pay every time. Like, that's the real thing. One of the big benefits of playing Steel Song is you get like 3 singers in play, and all of a sudden just all your removal spells are completely free. And this gives you access to another removal spell, but it isn't free. Like, you have to spend ink on it, which is, I mean, 2 ink is worth the cost, but it's just, is it worth the cost and the setup and the card and the slot in your deck? That I don't know.
Yeah, it's a lot of ifs.
I think for me, probably the cards I'm most excited to play with are probably the red brush characters. I don't know if they're going to be good. I think they're going to be fringe playable. They're not going to like be game breaking. I like the ability to play a Rafiki in a non-amethyst deck. It makes I'm much more excited to actually play a Ruby mid-range deck, whereas like people have been playing Mufasa for a while for the last 2 sets, but I just feel like there were some pretty big weaknesses to the deck. It wasn't very interactive. You could just sort of lose to your opponent curving out. Whereas I think something like this Hercules is going to do a lot to.
Yeah, Queen's just not enough. Like the fact that she's inkable is nice, but like she doesn't kill the things you really want to kill. I mean, sure, Rafiki's not killing a Flavor Sham either, but it's killing Aerials, and like that's a big game sometimes.
Right.
It kills Ursula's. That's also like pretty relevant.
Yeah, it hits all the 1/3s. It lives through all the goons, which is probably the biggest thing against Steel Song. So like if you're playing a Ruby mid-range deck, now if you're not reliant on a shift line, you can just quest with your Robin Hoods and your Queens or whatever that you played on turn 1. And yes, they can play Robin Hood, but then they sort of spend 2 ink and 1 card to trade with your 1-drop goons. Like that's not a big deal. Whereas if you're just straight up losing it to Rafiki or Hercules in this case, I think that that's a much more favorable line. I don't know. I think I'm excited to see more cards. Obviously, there's tons of cards we didn't talk about. Can't get to everything, but it's certainly exciting times. Spoiler season's obviously really, really fun. People love it, and it's just a great time to be playing Lorcana. I think the community is more excited about the future with set championships with organized play than they've ever been so far. So it's really, really cool.
Very hyped.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening. I think that maybe after this episode, I'm guessing we'll transition the podcast to the team YouTube page, which is now up and running. So I will put a link in the description, but please go and subscribe to the Team Labyrinth YouTube channel, because that is eventually going to be the home of the podcast. And if you want to keep listening, that is where you'll have to be to find it. Yeah. Thank you again, and we'll catch you next time.